So we've just discussed conduct, the idea of conduct giving rise to state responsibility as an act or omission where the characterization of that act is governed by international law. Let's talk about attribution. We need conduct attributable to a state. So the general rule is that a state is responsible for the conduct of its organs, but there are 6 exceptional categories where a state may be responsible for the conduct of persons or entities which are not its organs, and we'll come to those later. But so the basic rule is states responsible for the conduct of their organs unless the person or entity falls into one of these 6 categories. So the basic rule is a state is responsible for the conduct of its organs even when those organs are acting in excessive authority under Articles 4 and 7 of the ILC Articles. Now that second Article 7 idea is logical when you think about it. It is not open to a state to say we're not responsible for the conduct of a police officer because they're acting unlawfully, unconstitutionally, or contrary to international law. If that was the case, then there would be very little for state responsibility to deal with. There might be some circumstances where state responsibility is triggered by lawful conduct, but largely what you're going to be wanting to complain about is state's unlawful conduct. So let's break this down a little further. A state organ is one which carries out state functions, and that includes any organ with that status under national law. So it's an inclusive definition. However, national law cannot be decisive. So there will be a basic international characterization. And one way of thinking about that might be, well, irrespective of whether national law considers this person to be a part of the state, are they part of the legislature, the executive, or the judiciary? Are they closely integrated into the state and carrying out a state function? Now, the excessive authority rule, just to come back to it, the Malon case is good here. Malon involved an off-duty police officer who assaulted a foreign national, then went away, got his gun and badge, and arrested the foreign national to detain him and to continue to assault him. So the arbitral tribunal in that case held that there was no responsibility for, as it were, the off-duty personal acts, but when the officer came back and abused his status, his legal powers, and resources put at his disposal by the state, such as his gun and badge, then he was acting as a state organ. So responsibility there was not limited to acts that were within power or intra vires. Okay, very quickly then, 6 cases where a state may be responsible for the conduct of persons or entities which are not its organs. First, persons or entities empowered to exercise elements of governmental authority. So this might be, for example, a private corporation running a prison would be one example. Empowered to exercise elements of government authority. Foreign state organs placed at another state's disposal. So, for example, public health workers during an emergency might be transferred from one state's government basically into another state's command and control. But it's only where they're in that position of a lone servant. They have to follow the instructions and orders of that state they've been lent to. But they would ordinarily be, as it were, the employees of another state and therefore not its organs. Alright, persons or entities acting under the direction and control of the state. So here we can think of the rebels in the Nicaragua case. Were they acting under the direction and control of the United States? Well, in Nicaragua it was found they were not in the case of individual operations, but had they been acting under the close direction and control of the US, they would have been treated as entities for which the US was responsible. Persons or entities exercising elements of governmental authority in default of the official authorities, Article 9. So in a time of revolution or governmental transition, certain people, or even the absence of government, certain people might step up and perform what are ordinarily public functions in the absence of government. A special rule, successful revolutionary movements which become the government, the state then becomes retrospectively responsible for the acts of that revolutionary movement. This can be thought of as an exceptional rule. And finally, a state's responsible for the conduct of private people where and to the extent the state acknowledges and adopts the conduct, as happened in the Tehran hostages case.